Riek Machar had an opportunity of taking over the presidency between 2005 and 2012. Would anything have happened to Kiir at that point? Because it was within the SPLM, he was the deputy chairperson for the SPLM, and he was the vice president. Welcome to Jimosi podcast. So today we'll just be doing our weekly update. And one of our top stories that we're going to look at, what happened this week in South Sudan. Salva Kiir changed some of political position. And what I'm going to ask you is that if anything was to happen to Salva Kiir today, do you think Riek Machar can be the next president of South Sudan, being the first vice president?
No, I don't think Riek Machar will take over the leadership of South Sudan. Should President Kiir, let's say, pass away, or should he become incapacitated? That is, Akwe Mgonjo.
Or step down.
Yeah, step down. That doesn't exist. Vocabularies are African presidents.
Okay.
They will die in office.
Okay.
If at all. If they could have their way. Yeah, but stepping down, no. Power is... Wanasemanga
Sweet.
Power is what? Sweet. Kuna something else nimesahau.
Okay.
Power is addictive. So you get hold of it and then you don't want to let go. So I don't think he would step down. Maybe the only thing that would really force him out is probably death. Elections, if at all they do elections. Ama akwe mgonjwa such that he has to be in a coma or bedridden and is no longer able to run the government while in hospital. So that way, the next person will take over. But in this case, that next person can never be Riek Machar. One, because they are not from the same political party. Yes, both political parties are SPLM, but one is in opposition, which is the party led by Riek Machar, and the other one is in government, IG, which is led by President Salva Kiir. So if he was to become incapacitated for whatever reason that he's no longer able to lead, then the next person that would take over as the interim president until if they decide to do elections or the person would continue again for the next 20 years, Kama Kiir has done, then that next person would obviously come from the SPLM IG, which is Kiir's political party. Yeah, and based on the recent happenings in politics, the appointments, the next person that I feel is being groomed for presidency is none other than Dr. Benjamin Bolme.
Must you add the doctorate?
Well, ukimtafuta on Facebook, on like social media, akona Dr. DR.
Okay. Yeah, so for me, I don't think Riek Machar will take over that presidency.
Is it will or can? Because he would be willing to.
Yeah, if he can.
But he has no opportunity.
Yeah, so I don't think he can take over the presidency if anything was to happen to the President Kiir, regardless of him being the first vice president. Because I saw people online saying Bolmel is wasting his time. In terms of hierarchy, he cannot be the president if anything was to happen to Kiir because he's not the first vice president. The first vice president is Riek and is the one that is entitled to presidency based on that hierarchy. But these people forget that him being a first vice president is an accommodation.
Yeah.
It's just to make him look more somebody superior or more powerful than other four vice presidents. If he was just given a name vice president, it would look like any other person like Taban, like Nyandengdit, like Bolmel, and like
Josephine.
Josephine something. Yeah.
The one who replaced, was it Hussein Abdelbagi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that first vice president was just used for differentiation.
Decoration.
Yeah, for differentiation between the other vice president. It doesn't carry anything much.
Yeah, and even if you search online, sorry to cut you short, there are no specific, like there's no job description for the first vice president.
Yeah.
These others you find, Nyandengit is the vice president for gender and youth cluster. And then Bolmil ni wa economic cluster. Wale wengine kuna different like titles.
Yeah.
But then for Riek Machar, ni kama tu.
Yeah, so they leave it there. So for that reason, it cannot be. That first doesn't hold anything stronger than just being the first. Number two, like you said, he has his own political party.
Yeah.
And if Kiir is dying as somebody from the SPLM. So it will need to be replaced by the party SPLM. A member of SPLM cannot be replaced by an opposition party. And I know some people that were saying, but look at Tanzania and Kenya, what happened when Jomo Kenyatta died.
Daniel Toroitich
took over. When Magufuli died, Mama Samia Suluhu took over. But they forget that these people were from the same party. Daniel Toroitich Moy was in Kanu when Jomo Kenyatta died, so that's why he took over. The same thing to Mama Samia Suluhu. She was a vice president within the CCM, Chama cha Mapinduzi.
So she was the second in
command in terms of the terms of the party. So that's why in those cases they took over. It's not just being the first vice president, because look at that time when Jomo Kenyatta was dying, Jaramogi Oginga, who was the first vice president, who even said he will not take over the power.
He will not form the government
without the rest.
Kenyatta and
the other five, Kapenguria 6 being released.
Yeah.
Kenya did not say, because he was the first vice president, Aramoa, where you step aside, let him take over. No, because he left and formed his own party, he became somebody different of a different political party. Yeah. And then also, just to put things in perspective, look at these other countries. Uganda right now, they have a vice president. If anything was to happen to Museveni, do you think the vice president will take over because she is even from the same political party, or or she's a vice president? No.
Museveni's son will take over.
Yeah, right now they're ruling together with the son at home. And this boy and this young man is not the vice president.
Museveni is also 80 years old.
Yes. So you see there, in Uganda case, the vice president will not take over. The son who is in the military will take over. And that's what everybody knows.
Yeah. Unajua hata, like, even if they were to say everyone else wants the vice president to take over after Museveni, the son and the military would not agree. They will stage another coup. And that's how Museveni came into power when he was a youth. So
there were so many coups. There were so many coups in the 80s.
Yeah. So like this guy has been in that position. I think hata before Kijana azaliwe, he got into presidency, maybe hata before getting married, akaoa, akazaa. Hadi amezeeka. So the son would also make use of the military. Some people were even making memes that Isaiah amechoka na babake. Like he just wants him to get out of the way and then ajieke, and he's very entitled.
Yes, and maybe we have worked for it, nobody knows. But like we have seen in the case of Uganda, a vice president is not taking over. And we all know that. If you go to Rwanda, I don't think if we know vice president, and if a vice president will, and if vice president will take over that thing, if anything was to happen to Kagame. So there are some political realities that you people should think of when you don't just compare democracies. There are some democracies that are a little bit complicated. And South Sudan is not an exception. It falls into this category of Uganda, Rwanda, and Sudan. So South Sudan is not an exception.
Wait, I think there's no vice president in Rwanda.
I think there is.
Ati kulikuwa na nini? There was that position between 94 and 2000, but the office was abolished in 2000, and President Kagame's role was then expanded to include both the presidency and the Ministry of Defense.
So you see, these things are done intentionally. Like if a vice president become so ambitious like the way that Riek Machar is becoming, so I think that's why Kagame had to abolish it. And look at the same thing in Kenya.
Prime Minister though, the current Prime Minister is not a vice president. However, the Senate's vice president in charge of administration and finance is Honorable Mukabaramba.
Yeah, so when a vice president becomes so ambitious, in some countries like Rwanda, that position is abolished and see what you will do. In places like Kenya, when Rigiji became so ambitious, he was impeached and removed.
Man, that guy walimtoa within 1 year.
Yes, hakukaa sana na venye alikuwa ameweka mitego kwa huko State House. So the same thing.
Ati Wakenya wanasema alijitega mwenyewe, alikuwa anasema anatega Rao.
Yeah, and the same thing applied to Riek Machar because he became too ambitious and he spoiled his opportunity.
Yeah,
and that's
right
how
now he's in the
he's in a political different party at the moment.
Excuse me. Yeah.
So the only way that Riek Machar can take over, like he said, is through election.
Yeah.
Gather his party, they campaign the entire country, and then they come pitch their idea to the population, and if people vote for him, well, he will take it over there. But this still, thing of succession of somebody dying and then taking over, it has lost that. Yeah.
And also after even stories the elections, it will be very tricky because we know, like in Africa, especially if you are going for an election with someone who's already deep state, wale wenye wako kwa system already, kuna a lot of rigging that happens. So you can be rigged out. Like there's literally no winning. Ukijaribu ku inakata. You need like a strong army.
Yeah, but
so it's tricky.
Sometimes it works. It is that it might not work in South Sudan right now, but it can work if the whole country is against one person. Let's say people were to go for election today, and everybody do not like Kiir.
Coming from SPLM.
Let's say Kiir is the front runner. Let's say, how do you call it? Is the candidate, presidential candidate for the SPLM, and there's a different party that people like most. If 90% of population vote for the other party and only 10% vote for SPLM, it will be really hard to
landslide.
Yeah, because it shows there's no support for you, even in the army, even like around you, there's no support. You'll just have to give it. But when the country is divided halfway, then it's easy for the ruling party to rig the election and take over. And what I can say is that Riek Machar had an opportunity of taking over the presidency between 2005 and 2012. Would anything have happened to Kiir at that point? Because it was within the SPLM, he was the deputy chairperson for the SPLM, and he was the vice president.
Like literally the second in command.
Yes. So if anything would have happened to Kiir between 2005 and 2012, it was going to be him, with nobody complaining. But breaking away in 2013, forming his own political party, he has to forget about anything that to do with the main SPLM in terms of powers.
Yeah.
And if I'm Riek,
What would you do?
I will leave the political scene. Now that I've seen people are leaving, I'll just try to prepare my kids either to take over the leadership of the SPLM IO or let them come into the government in a different way.
Yeah.
And then train them in the background while I sit at home. Yeah.
He's also 72 years old, so he's not getting any younger.
But the thing is younger than him.
Than he. Only 1 year. At 72, you only have 3 years to karibu niseme to expire. You have 3 years to retire.
If all the factors were to be all constant and only the aging factor to continue, then if Kiir was to die that year, he had 1 year of ruling and he died the following year.
Hata bibi yake pia ako 72. Angelina.
They're here for age mates to marry each other. Yes.
Because they have been married for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, like I don't
70. I don't see myself in, let's say, like public service. Your top political yenye unakumbana na so much
so umesema it's addictive. If you get in, you will not want to leave. Sindio Raila Odinga ako ndani at 80s. Para jua anapiga siasa. So
some things you just need to rest.
Yeah.
It's never that serious. Like, why would you be?
No, like I don't
Raila
think.
ako 80.
Yes,
On 1945. Ni baby boomer. And your boomers, right?
Yeah.
Between 45 and 60.
Garang Mabir will be 80 now. Yeah. So, like I'm telling you that when you are in a certain place and you want a certain position, you don't really think of this thing, oh, ni ya kufanyia nini. You just want it really, really bad. And these satisfactions zenye unaona ziko hapa nje, huko hazikufurahishi. That's why you see billionaires still working. And you're like, hata hiyo pesa yenye ametengeneza, it was to sit at home and eat them, he can eat them for hadi akufe. But still, kuna hiyo kitu inampush. But then again, in Africa, with your political, being the president always make you like you have achieved the highest in life.
The highest office in the country.
Yes, and also in life as a personal fulfillment.
Yeah.
So that's why you see some old dudes still want to be president, so that your dream yaku to the highest amefikia.
Yeah,
it's not about money at some point.
Because the same thing applies to Museveni. Do you know he has made constitutional changes, I think, at least 2 times. The first one, ilikuwa ya term limits. That you can only vie for presidency for 2 terms. Akang'oa hiyo kitu. So, like, term limits ni infinite at the moment. And then the next one was the presidency should be between the ages of 35 to around 75. During the elections, I think ni zile zenye zilipita juzi, akatoa hiyo because he was going to be 76 by the time they do the next elections. Akaona this age limit thing would knock me out. So he removed that. So if you can change the constitution to accommodate yourself, and it's not like you are bettering their lives. We've been to Uganda, right? You see how it has been.
Well, it was not given the presidency through the votes. He took it through blood. It's not like people sat down and say, we are now voting you in and we are no.
No, but the subsequent ones, ilikuwa sasa ni elections. But because of fear and all these enemies zenye ume create along the way, you still feel like holding the power. And that's why I consolidate power into his family.
I don't want to discuss the leadership of Museveni because it's a little bit complicated. Because sometimes you look at the stability of a country. Uganda, before he came in, it used to be like tomorrow somebody's president, tomorrow is removed.
Coup after coup.
Coup after coup, coup after coup. And people are dying in the process.
Yeah.
When he took over, he might have killed some people just to make sure that nobody become stronger and more resistive to his powers. But at least he has reduced the number of the bloodshed that would have been happening. He would have, if he was removed, let's say it took in 86, if somebody removed him in 90, somebody come and take over in 94, somebody come take over in 98, Uganda will still be fighting like the way South Sudan is doing right now.
Yeah, it's tricky.
As
but
much
that
as
goes to show you how much the length people are willing to go for power.
Yes.
Because
so
if you can change the constitution.
So it reach a point where it doesn't, it's like, okay, I'm almost going there. So why would I sinimalize to equate to I took it and I died? What is that? It's not like he has built as, how do we call
Legacy.
it? A good legacy that people, even if he was to resign today, people will say, oh, it was good. People are still going to talk bad. So kumalizia watu wakisemanga it was bad and it was bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, like saa zingine they talk of people who resign, sijui nini. In history and government, even in Kenya, they used to say Moi resigned. That's because, like, he literally didn't nini. Angetaka kuendelea kuwa president, he would have easily done that.
No, I don't think Moi resigned.
So like
Moi
this
was
person,
voted
like
out.
akiresign sahi ama akiamua tu lose elections or do some fair elections ama achane na history ya alter the constitution, then at least kutakuwa na that one quality yenye watu wanamkumbuka nayo.
It's too late. It's not worth it.
The damage has been done.
Yes, it would have done a long time. Like 5 years ago, would have sounded better. But now it's too late. People are like, hata ukae ndani ukufie ndani, we don't really care anymore.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel the same way. Like, it seems when you look at Kenyans and Ugandans, as much as they share border and stuff, not a lot of contrast. Kenyans are more proactive when it comes to politics, but Ugandans are more relaxed. Like, they don't really care that much about what's happening.
I told you, let not get into it. Freedom of speech is different in those countries. Yeah. So that's it for Jimosi podcast. Please consider subscribing.
We are
like, share, comment.
133
and
growing
stronger.
Yeah, thank you for all the subscribers. Ile video last time really shoot did so well. Hopefully this one is also going to go viral.